Hello and welcome to another video from Kerbin. In this video I'm responding to a subscriber request. It's not like I'm swamped with requests, so I thought I'd try and help him out. So, Cyan Wesh, I hope I've pronounced that correctly, wants to go to Eve and return back to Kerbin, I assume safely, without docking or refuelling, and it needs to run on a slow PC. Okay, I'm up for the challenge. Although Cyan Wesh didn't say what he wants me to do when I get to Eve, so I've used my creative license. So this is where we are going and hopefully getting back from. Eve is 1,400 kilometers in diameter and has 1.7 times the Kerbin gravity, and has an atmosphere at 90,000 meters. It would have been handy to know that before I started, but I didn't check it, so I just went for it. So off we go, on our way to Eve, and hopefully back again. Well, I tried to keep the rocket relatively simple. It's only 145 parts, and was it 1,200 tons? So I think that's fairly simple. There's probably people that can tell me otherwise, but as you can see from now on we're jettisoning parts, so it's getting lighter and easier on the computer to work it all out. So we're just getting ready to perform the orbit insertion burn, which will be coming up shortly, but I'm running out of time to get to it, so I've used the engines to help turn the rocket and finished off the last couple of external booster tanks. So as it slowly climbs, we watch the orbit prediction line slowly spreading out across the planet and willing it on to push itself into orbit. Get in there. So we're going to run out of fuel in that stage. There we go, we'll have to do another stage. I was hoping to get into orbit on that stage, but not to worry, I think we've got plenty of fuel. And there we go, we're nearly in orbit, and there it goes, and done. Right, well, from orbit we need to get to Eve, so we're going to use the manoeuvre node to try and plot a course. First we're going to break out of Kerbin orbit into solar orbit around the sun, and then once we're in solar orbit we can then see if we can find an encounter with Eve. So with our manoeuvre set we fire up the Rhino engine, I think it is. And again, another quite a long burn, but as it's speeded up in editing it doesn't seem to take quite that long, and we've still got half a tank of that fuel left. That's good. So we just time warp to the end of the trajectory line, and it then shows us in orbit around the sun. So we give ourselves a bit of time and looking for an encounter with Eve. I didn't check to see what the alignments of the planets were before I started this, I just went for it. So I have to do a lot of waiting or a lot of time warping a bit later on to actually get to the encounters. But as you can see, I'm getting one set up fairly close. So we get the manoeuvre node lined up, and once that's tracked it, we can then hit time warp. And we've got to do almost a whole year, I think, and nearly a whole orbit of Kerbin, or with Kerbin, around the sun. So when we finish the time warp we can actually perform the burn manoeuvre to bring our orbit into the encounter with Eve. Although I'm going to stop it a little bit early, just there, and we're close on the encounter, and then I'll just do a gentle burn just to fine tune it to get it to what I wanted, and then I can just do another manoeuvre a bit later in the when we get closer to the encounter with Eve, and can fine tune the orbit there. So another time warp up to our manoeuvre node, and then we can have a very short burn just to tweak the encounter. And as we get to the end of that prediction line we get to the encounter line. There we go. So we've now got to slow down, so performing another manoeuvre to pull us into a partial orbit around Eve. I didn't go for it all in one manoeuvre. and we're just jettisoning off that last stage. So there we go, it gets more or less into the orbit, and then we do another burn where I'm a bit closer just to actually make it into orbit, and then we can work out what to do next. So there we go, we got it into orbit, but it's a long way off, so we're going to bring one side of the orbit nice and close to Eve. And by close, I suppose I mean fairly close. We don't have to do anything too silly. I don't want to find myself in the atmosphere any sooner than I need to. So there we go, we've got into position, so we're going to undock one of the probes. Now I had to rearrange the staging of this because it wouldn't stay how I wanted it in the main rocket staging system. So I always knew I was going to have to check that before we go any further. I managed to get the rocket to fire first and not the separator or the parachute. So we're using this little probe to really bring down the orbit into a lopsided one. Now I do want to get fairly close to the atmosphere, although as I said I didn't know where it was. I knew I was going to run into it sooner or later, but yeah, we're just looking for a tighter and tighter orbit, and I'm also trying to plan to do this on the day side of Eve as well. Done plenty of missions in the dark and I remembered to pre-plan this one so I could do it in daylight. So there we go, we're just performing a few maneuvers to get that set up right, and where are we going to end up? So we're still, oh no, we're down at 80,000, I'm a bit closer than I wanted, so we're already into the atmosphere, as you can see. So I'll jettison the rocket body because there's no fuel left in it anyway at this stage, and now we're just on the heat shield, protecting us from the atmosphere of Eve at however fast we're going. Oh, it's slowing down. Oh yeah, slowed down quite nicely. So we're down at sort of 200 odd meters per second, so that's safe enough to deploy the parachute. Also we've managed to jettison the heat shield, but we're still a long way up, so I'm not going to deploy the parachute until we're much closer to the ground. It takes quite a long time, even so we're only doing 70 meters per second and it's still slowing down. I haven't even put the parachute out yet. Playing with the SAS and trying to work out, don't want to waste the batteries because I need them to deploy the parachute and for the communication, so trying not to waste the electric, but we seem alright on that score, and we're getting closer to the ground. Just checking the pressure because I put some science on it, but it doesn't mean anything, just something to do on the way down. So we can see the shadows now, and we just see the heat shield impact the ground. So now will probably be a good time to deploy the parachute. And so what we took 400 meters, and we're still doing 25 meters per second. I was hoping it'd be slower than that. 22. Ooh, no, not even in splashdown. Oh dear, never mind. So here we are back at the tracking station, and I'm looking for my Eve return spaceship so we can have a go at see if we can land the second probe that's attached to the ship. So we're just going to maneuver back into a preferable position while we're trying to land the other one. It's obviously the main rocket has gone round the orbit of Eve a bit further. So there we are, we've detached the second probe and we're going to rearrange it and deploy the antenna. That's an important thing to do with those. And there we go, there's the orbit, so the manoeuvre we're going to make. And I think, was that say 62? That's a bit low again. 45, no, don't go that low. Oh dear, that's going to be quite fast and hot. Oh, there we go, so that's blowing the engine. Oh no, it's still working. What was that blew off then? Right, so we're just going to use the engine to try and slow down as much as we can before we overheat. It's awfully close. Those temperature gauges are pushing Oh, there it goes. We've lost the engine. Oh, and the fuel tank. Oh, we've lost everything. Oh no, the heat shield survived. Is that the probe behind it? No, it's just the parachute. So the heat shield and the parachute have survived. I can't control either of them. Obviously there's no control on the heat shield, and well, the parachute hasn't got a battery for starters, so that's the end of that. But because the game was still in progress, it wasn't happy about me going back, so it went back to a save, and fortunately that was just after I detached the second probe, so we get another go for free. Pretty sure the results are going to be the same as the first two times, but well, we've got the opportunity, we might as well take it. So up to the maneuver node, circularize, and then reduce one side, and we'll make it the sunny side again so we can see what we're doing. It looks like I'm aiming for 74,000 meters this time, but I've overshot to 58,000. So yeah, it's gonna be another toasty entry. But let's see what happens. I think both previous attempts I've managed to land in the sea. Well, one was in the sea, wasn't it? The other one didn't make it that far. So it'd be nice to make it to land this time, but lost the aerial. That's what keeps blowing up first, the communication device. But there we go, we've jettisoned the tank, and we're just running on the thermal heat shield. What we lost? I think we lost a battery, perhaps, or might have been a solar panel. But yeah, we're still going. We're still going very fast. 3,000 odd meters per second, and we're still above 50,000 meters. So a long way to go yet. So we're hanging on there. There's a couple of items getting a bit hot, but they seem to have cooled off enough now. So we've slowed down quite a lot. Coming up on 1,000 meters per second. And is that land or water I'm going to land on? Oh, there goes the heat shield. Right, so I think we're above the water. I think the darker purple's land. This purple below must be the sea again. So we've deployed the parachute a lot earlier this time to try and slow down a bit more, but I don't think it will make that much difference as we're time warping down. So 3,000 odd meters, and how fast we going this time? 22, 21, 22. No, that's too fast. Okay, note to self, and anybody listening, if you're going to do this, if you're going to download the ship from the location below in the description, add some more parachutes to the probes. Yeah, and don't forget to let me know how you get on. So we've managed to destroy both the probes, so it's now time to head home. So first of all, we've got to break out of orbit from Eve and back into a solar orbit, and lots of time warping again. So that should bring us back into solar orbit. So now we're gonna look for a Kerbin encounter, but first of all we need to align the orbital planes to make it a bit easier to get the encounter, just to get the two orbital planes lined up. So we've time warped to the maneuver node, and it's a fairly short burn, it's at 20 odd seconds, just to get everything lined up. So with that done, we now start looking for an encounter with Kerbin. As I said in the beginning, I hadn't looked up any of the planet positions or anything before I started this, and just went for it from whatever day one was. And as you can see, we can only move the maneuver node around for one cycle around the orbit until you catch up your spaceship or whatever. So I kept having a time warp and move it a bit further. Can I get the encounter there? Looks like I've finally got one there. So now I have to time it all the way around again to my manoeuvre node. How long is this mission? Oh, it's still only 309 days. I'm not sure how many Kerbin days there are in a Kerbin year. It seems we've done several orbits of the Sun, so I would have thought we would have been on a few years by now. But anyway, so more time warping until it's nice and close, and another manoeuvre just to fine tune it. And I'm just using the fine controls in the panel on the bottom left hand corner of the screen, and you can use the slider to adjust the sensitivity of the clicks. It makes it a bit easier, I think, trying to do the fine manoeuvres anyway. So a time warp up to the manoeuvre node, and a quick fire of the engines brings us into the encounter. And there we are. Got some orbit predictions lines flicking around for some reason. I'm not sure if there's something to do with me or not. Now I'm just over adjusting the orbit. There we go, let's put it back there. So that will take me most of the way into an orbit around Kerbin, and once I've completed that, we can then do another manoeuvre to get properly into orbit. So that's that bit done. So we set another manoeuvre which should get us into orbit. But then I realised that if I carried on with this, it was going to take me into orbit the wrong way around Kerbin. So I'd be going into an orbit in the opposite direction to which the planet is spinning, which will make things a bit harder, I imagine. So we're trying to pull the manoeuvre node round so that I can come into orbit in the right direction. There we go, that's looking better. So we can get a reasonably close encounter, obviously well inside the orbit of the Mun. We can perform that manoeuvre. Doesn't seem to take too much fuel, although we have run out in that tank, so I'm going to jettison the last tank off, and just checking the separation's going to work properly. Oh, that was close. Glad I spotted that. There we go. So just down to the last bit of fuel, well, last tank of fuel. Still quite a lot of fuel in there, I suppose, but we've still got some manoeuvres to do. So there we are, that's that one done. Oh, that didn't come as close as I was expecting. I think we were doing the manoeuvre on a smaller engine in the end. So yeah, no big hassle to do another manoeuvre just to get nice and close again. And hopefully we'll have got enough fuel to get the orbit. So what are we doing? Oh, we got an encounter we don't really want. We're going to bump into the Mun if we're not careful. Am I going to hit the Mun? Oh, come on, time warp forward a bit. Oh, stop faffing about with the orbit and show us what the Mun... We're going to hit the Mun. Where is it? Oh no, we just missed it. That would have been unfortunate if I'd hit the Mun on the way home. Yeah. Anyway, survived that worrying moment then. And we're approaching our orbit manoeuvre node. So we've just got the orbit plan there, so I'm just going to tighten it up into a much closer approach, as we've got loads of fuel to spare. So I won't have to try any aero braking. We can just keep tightening the orbit up and then drop into the atmosphere when we're ready. So quite a long burn, this, over a minute or so in game time, not so long in fast forward. So we just got a couple of simple manoeuvres to do, just to bring the orbit down to something where we can do a dive into the atmosphere and see if we can get it on the daytime side as well. which makes for easier watching. So we are just finishing that manoeuvre. So where's that leave us? Oh, well, we're coming round to the daylight side. And well, it might be evening by the time we get there, by the looks of it. Or morning. Is it morning? Yes, morning. Sorry, wrong way round. So there we go. So we're planning to land in the middle of the ocean at the moment, because by the time we get there, hopefully Kerbin will have rotated enough and we should be a bit closer. But now it's just a matter of waiting, or time warping, if you're not that patient. And what we got? So we're going to put the solar panels away and the communication dish. Not that we're going to need them anymore. So now we're going to try and slow down enough to drop into the Kerbal Space Centre, but we just run out of fuel. So we can ditch that then, and we are now going to have a look in the cockpit. I don't think we're quite entering the friction zone of the atmosphere yet, although we should be getting close. But we've got the heat shield, so that's doing its job. That slowed us down sufficiently. So when we jettison that, it should drop away. And the parachute, there we go. Safe to deploy. Oh, there goes the heat shield that was being held on by aerodynamic forces. And just a few hundred meters to go for a splashdown. And what does that say? 22.8 kilometers from the Kerbal Space Centre. That's not too bad. I'm sure they can send a rescue boat out fairly quickly. So 20 meters to go. 10. Splashdown. Well done, Jeb. So we can even recover Jeb and the spaceship, and all is well. Well, that's all for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please click on like and don't forget to subscribe. And check back soon for new videos. But while you're waiting, why don't you check out some of my other videos. Thank you for watching.